Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Play Great Ace Attorney 2. Ryunosuke's Resolve. In our last episode, we found out that the autopsy report for Clint Van Zeeks had been fabricated. And we've now found out how exactly. All the evidence for the professor case, the precise evidence they needed, it was fabricated evidence. Genshin was innocent all along. I've always believed those thugs were after me. But now, I'm starting to question if perhaps I wasn't the intended target after all. Wait, but... Genshin was arrested 2 days after that attack. In that short interval, the decisive evidence needed to indict him was miraculously found. You mean, the ring was stolen from him? You think that's what those thugs were after that night?
Objection!
You pathetic coward. You expect me to believe that you weren't involved? What do you mean by that? It was you, wasn't it? You're the one who took it. You stole my father's ring. You set the whole thing up so you could paint him as a mass murderer and have him arrested. Kazuma, open your eyes. Ryunosuke, you must know deep down. The truth can be completely obscured even when your judgment is only slightly clouded. But at the moment, you seem to be floundering through a dense fog. Is that why you were so insistent I should be present in this trial? To see you like this? Well, this is an amusing spectacle. Yes. What a grandiose expression on your face. As if you were Lady Justice herself. It seems you've thoroughly convinced yourself of this alleged fabrication of the autopsy report. So much so, you're apparently blind to the blatant contradiction that would be born out of it. Well, though it's extremely hard to believe, let us imagine that there was some misconduct during the autopsy. If that were the case, why would Asogi not have disputed the findings in his trial? In the closed court hearing 10 years ago, the defendant never once denied the claims against him. Isn't that right, Lord Van Zeeks? Yes, that is indeed correct. Upon hearing the verdict of guilty, he merely closed his eyes, quietly accepting the judgment. The actions of a man who has accepted responsibility for his deeds and is resigned to his fate. But then... Oh my, that is very strange. If Mr. Asogi did nothing to oppose the charges against him, then... that would surely mean there was no fabricated evidence. An obvious conclusion at which you would have arrived many minutes ago, Prosecutor Asogi. Your twisted loyalty and clouded judgment are hampering your ability for logical thought. Genshin Asogi's silence at his hearing can mean only one thing. There was no fabrication of evidence during the autopsy of his final victim 10 years ago. Ah! But if that autopsy was all above board, there will be nothing to stop Lord Strongheart bringing this trial to an immediate conclusion. Thank you, Ryunosuke. If it wasn't for your frank words just now, this trial may very well have ended prematurely. Kazuma? What's this latest absurdity? Counsel! My lord, your reasoning is perfectly sound, but for one giant hole. I beg your pardon? You claim my father's silence was due to the fact there is no fabricated evidence. But there is another possible explanation. you've overlooked the possibility that he had a reason for maintaining that silence.
Objection!
Silence that would lead him to being convicted and sent to his death? If the autopsy results were an intervention, there's no conceivable reason why the man wouldn't have protested.
Objection!
Oh, those results were an invention, all right. There's no question of that. Are you forgetting that 2 people with a connection to the autopsy have been assassinated? If I force the grievances I feel from my mind, I start to see you in a very different light. I think perhaps it's you who's been living in delusion these 10 years. Me? Kazuma-sama's created one last chance for us here, Mr. Naruhodo. If we can only show there was a reason for his father's silence in his trial. A reason why the man would have said nothing, even though he was innocent. Could it have been part of some negotiation, perhaps? Enough rhetoric! The court must be shown evidence! What proof do you have that could possibly explain his silence in court? Now, where is it? It's true that Genshin Asogi's silence during his trial resulted in his conviction. But that didn't actually lead to his execution. On the contrary. It led to his escape. An escape that was only possible because he'd been sentenced to death. Although I find it hard to believe my father would have negotiated it that way. The defense is correct. A fake execution, falsification of a death certificate, and a jailbreak inside a coffin. Clearly such an elaborate plan couldn't have been carried out by my father alone. He must have had the help of a collaborator from the judiciary. I have here the dismissal notice of the chief warder who was working at the prison at the time. The notes read, there are indications that the jailbreak was in planning prior to the inmate's incarceration. In other words, there were suggestions of some sort of negotiation between Mr. Asogi and the British government. In exchange for his silence in court, he was given an assurance he would be broken out of prison. With that sort of clandestine agreement in place, I can imagine he would have kept very quiet. I would go further than that, in fact. I would say that the elaborate jailbreak of Mr. Asogi can be explained in no other way. Order! Order! First fabricated evidence, and now a jailbreak conspiracy? Of course, because it's all intimately linked. The prosecution wishes to summon new witnesses to the stand. Witnesses? People who can testify about the jailbreak that took place 10 years ago. Ah, Governor Caden and the poor chief warder of the prison. I won't allow this trial to turn into a farce. To summon the governor of the prison after all these years. Oh, it wouldn't be any trouble, my lord. What? Father? My dear friend may appear a little rattle-pated at times, but I can assure you he's extremely thorough. He wired both Barclay and a local prison earlier, asking Governor Caden and Mr. Vigil to attend the Old Bailey as a matter of extreme urgency. Mr. Sholmes did that? Are you telling me that? Both men are, unless I'm very much mistaken, waiting just outside the courtroom at this very moment. My lord, you must permit this trial to continue as you declared at its outset. You promised that we would stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Very well. Bring in the witnesses. Make no mistake, I too would like nothing more than to lay this business to rest once and for all. I bet you would. Alrighty, what have we got here? There they are. Would the new witnesses state their names and occupations for the court, please? Hey, Betty Caden, Governor of Barclay Prison. Everyone calls me Gossip. I sell jaunty tidbits to passers-by. Your other persona, if you don't mind. Oh, I do beg your pardon. Of course. My name is Daily Vigil. I used to be the chief warder at Barclay Prison. The reason you've been summoned here to court today is to testify about the jailbreak of the so-called professor 10 years ago. Losh, the professor! We've already been through all that this before, a decade ago. And the conclusion was that there was anything untoward happened. A convict escaped from your prison, Governor. Hardly what you'd call nothing untoward. Well, the convict's death certificate was somehow falsified after he was allegedly executed, and he escaped the prison inside his own coffin. A plan of that complexity could never have been carried out without the help of somebody of influence inside the prison. Governor Caden, don't imagine that the passage of time will afford you any protection. If it turns out that you were involved in the plot to break Mr. Asogi out of your prison, then of course, the consequences will be very serious. And in all likelihood, a capital punishment. Gads! Hold on there, Lottie! All I did was... Witness, Governor Caden. Aye, sir. You have a critical role to play in the public safety of our country, a great responsibility to shoulder. The significance of your testimony in court cannot be understated. Therefore, think carefully before you speak. He's muzzling him. And Prosecutor Asogi, if you threaten the witness again, you will be held in contempt of court. My apologies, my lord. There's no disputing the fact that an intricate jailbreak plot was enacted 10 years ago. Clearly, you were both involved in some way. So you will testify before the court now and explain exactly what took place. Very well. Let the witnesses give their formal testimony. Tell the court everything you know of the plot to break Asogi out of Barclay 10 years ago. It was the day the Japanese jock was found guilty. The directive came from the prosecutor's office. I assigned the convict to the chief warder vigil here, and put the plan into action behind the scenes. I was responsible for Asogi right up until the night of his execution, but I knew nothing of any plot. I didn't ken that there were some negotiations between the convict and the prosecutor's office. All I did was carry out my duty for Her Majesty's great British Empire. A directive from the prosecutor's office? You saying that was the jailbreak plot? Aye, that's right. Who sent it? Who authorized that plan? I didn't ken that. You're saying you don't know? Listen, there wasn't a thing about the professor case that was not unusual in some way. I didn't ask any questions, I just did what I was told to do. More than that, I couldn't tell you. I see. But if the jailbreak plan originated from the prosecutor's office, then one thing is very clear. I suspected there were clandestine dealings going on between Mr. Asogi and that office. The jailbreak was promised in exchange for Mr. Asogi admitting to crimes he didn't commit. counsel is nothing more than speculation on your part. So, let me ask the defense. Yes, my lord. I fail to see how these witnesses have any more pertinent information here. Do you intend to assert your right to cross-examination? Absolutely. I have no intention of squandering a single opportunity, my lord. It seems all you Japanese are fiercely tenacious. Very well. Proceed, counsel. Okay, here we go. Blah, 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 blah.
Hold it!
Did you carry out the plan in its entirety? I did everything I could at the time. As you know, Genshin Asogi was shot dead in Lowgate Cemetery after the escape. Tell me, was that part of the plan too? My instructions were to do with getting the joke out of the jail and nothing more. I cannot tell you anything about what happened after that. Only, personally, I believe his death was the last part of the plan. Oh, really?
Excuse me.
Mr. Vigil, is something wrong? Yes, sir, what can I do for you, sir? He's saluting now? What is it? Some sort of Barclay convention? What Governor Caden was just saying seemed to upset you. Did it bring something to mind, perhaps? For the last 10 years, I've completely blotted out the memories of that time from my mind. I was betrayed by my superiors in the name of my country. Just as my father was betrayed, it seems. But you see, thinking back now, I really can't imagine that the shooting of Mr. Asogi in the cemetery was ever part of the plan. What makes you think that? Well, it just doesn't make sense, does it? To make the man admit to crimes he didn't commit with the promise of a jailbreak, only to kill him in the end. That's treachery of the worst kind. But the point is, if the intention was always to betray him, why would there be any need for all the chicaneries of an escape? Yes, that's quite true. If whoever negotiated with Asogi never intended to keep his or her end of the bargain, it would have been far simpler to just let the man be executed in prison as dictated by a sentence. It all happened in that vast chamber of secrets that is Barclay behind the high prison walls. I suppose nobody knows what really went on in the execution room now. Yes, it's an unsettling mystery, certainly. Truth be told, that is a wee matter that's never quite made sense to me. If you believe there was some kind of negotiation behind the jailbreak between Asogi and the body at the top, it doesn't quite add up, does it? Governor Caden, I must insist you explain those doubts you have. By amending your formal testimony. Gats! I go on then. It seems to me that the Japanese fella did not have nothing to bargain with. I don't think so.
Objection.
Confessing under oath to murders he didn't commit on a verbal assurance of later being broken out of prison? Genshin Asogi was taking an incredibly risky gamble. Very true. There was nothing to stop the British breaking their word and executing him behind closed doors anyway. Under normal circumstances, no man would stake his life on a gentleman's agreement like that. Which means that Mr. Asogi must have had a trump card. Something that guaranteed he wouldn't be betrayed. Some kind of weapon. Avers! The fella couldn't possibly have had anything like that. But you know that he did, Governor. At the Asogi Papers, the name given to the last will and testament of Genshin Asogi. Ah! It turns out Mr. Asogi was hiding his will in his cell at Barclay. Chief Warder Vigil caught him with it one day. You squealed, did ya, you wee rat? Did I not tell you to keep that secret? You can't touch me now. Gah! When Mr. Vigil caught sight of that will through the bars of the convict cell, Mr. Asogi pleaded with the warder. Alright then. But what's on that paper? The last will and testament. This will is the only weapon I have now. A weapon? And after the convict had been killed following the elaborate pretense of the jailbreak, that document mysteriously disappeared, didn't it? Well, yes. All the prison warders searched through the belongings in his cell, but that will was just nowhere to be found. As I understand it, an exhaustive search was made for the document, which became known as the Asogi Papers. Governor Kaden, I believe you ordered your prison staff to find it at all costs, didn't you? Ed! Would I be right in saying you knew? You knew that the so-called Asogi Papers had the potential to make great waves somehow. Jinx! What the place is you blathering about? The will was found, right and proper. In the fella's cell where I said it would be. How can that be? Where in his cell? We all searched the place, from top to bottom. Well, you didn't do a proper job, you pilly-wally galoot. You can't criticize me now. I showed it to you afore, did I not, young lawyer? Yes, I did. I have the document here. It's written in Japanese and reads, The Last Will and Testament of Genshin Asogi. Which means, everything is as it should be. Not quite, my lord. You see, there's an undeniable inconsistency here. What? What inconsistency? Mr. Asogi described the document as the only weapon he had left. And yet, this will contains nothing of significance at all. Nothing that would have given the convict any leverage. Are you suggesting, my learned friend, that the last will and testament stored at Barclay Prison all those years ago is actually a fake? As has clearly been demonstrated already, what went on at Barclay Prison was far from above board. The last vilification by the defense was an affront to the entire British legal system. That absurd notion of a weapon is something for which we have only the former Chief Warder's word. The man could quite easily be lying, or at the very least, sorely mistaken. What? No! I definitely heard him say that! I swear! Clearly we need to get to the bottom of this. We need to know exactly what happened with these so-called Asogi Papers. A waste of time. The will was fake. Where is the real document? Mr. Vigil was stabbed in the back by the judiciary 10 years ago. He lost everything, very nearly his own life. And now you're going to do it again. You're ready to brand him a liar and turn your back on him without even letting him defend himself. It's clear Barclay Prison is hiding something. It's clear that the jailbreak was masterminded by somebody in the prosecutor's office. It's clear some illicit negotiations took place. Is your lordship just going to gloss over these obvious facts? What did you say? We should hear more from the chief warder. The trial must go on. The man's voice must be heard. It would seem that a vocal few here are utterly blind to the truth. Very well then. Let the witness testify again. Tell the court precisely what you think you saw of the convict's last will and testament. Yes, sir. The Asogi Papers. As the warder responsible for condemned convicts, I attended to Mr. Asogi and kept watch over his cell. The night after he was found guilty in court, he was doing something with that will in his cell. We turned the cell inside out looking for it after the execution, but to no avail. I only found out about the Asogi Papers when a directive came telling me to impound him. The document was in the folds of the fellow's robe that was left in his cell. A kimono, I think it's called. In his kimono? That's a lie! We searched every inch of the man's cell. We looked through all his clothes. That can't be true. Well, you're not satisfied with calling me a liar once, you wee waffinger. There's nothing you can do about it now. You don't have any hold over me anymore. Other than the hold you like to take on my cravat, of course. Is that what you're going to do? Is it? Are you going to give me a good shake again? Or are you too scared? Ah! Hey, at least it ain't a double lariat. Little and large. What a double act. We complied with Asogi's will as far as was possible. All of his personal effects were delivered to his family home in Japan. As a courtesy to the homeland of the most notorious killer our country has ever seen. And we were much obliged. I can confirm that all of my father's belongings arrived safely. Aye, and you cannot deny the handwriting's that of your old man, eh? Yes, there's no mistaking that it's my father's brushwork. Really? And this last will and testament was the man's last weapon, was it? I think we can safely assure the convict was merely prattling. He knew his end was nigh. So, counsel for the defense, your cross-examination, please. Ow! Yow! Yes, my lord. We will do that next time.